Well, good morning. Back doing it live. Bishop on Air. Thanks for hanging out with me. We've got tons to get to. We'll talk about the latest in immigration up in Chicago with some aldermen saying that the mayor's team needs to be fired. So we'll get to that. Also, we've got to tackle the latest in gun ban litigation, with even more expected to come out today in one of the cases against the state's gun and magazine ban in the U.S. Supreme Court. So let's make sure we get to this. Hopefully I'm doing all right. And as far as the streaming, a little bit of a different setup here. Let's see if we can make sure everything's good. Give me a thumbs up if it looks all right. Yeah, I might have to do a few things here and there, but let's try this. All right, so hopefully we do have a good solid stream. Looks like people are checking in. Good morning to TAT2D. Good morning to Jerry. Good morning to Trevor. RB, good morning. Thumbs up all around. Freedom Steel, good morning. Good to check in here. Also, we got several others slowly checking in. Appreciate everybody. All right, let's go ahead and let's get to it. Tons to tackle right here with Bishop on Air. Follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop on Air and we can connect that way. All right, so make it happen. Yesterday, Governor J.B. Pritzker replied to the Naperville challengers in the U.S. Supreme Court, saying that the plaintiffs got it all wrong and that they have not shown a likelihood of succeeding on the merits, and also saying that the interests of the public outweighs the plaintiffs in their desire to try to overturn the state gun and magazine ban. Here is Hannah Hill, who raised this yesterday on her own Twitter page, letting people know about, their reaction, the National Association for Gun Rights, their reaction to the state's pronouncement here of saying that the plaintiffs don't have it right.
Hannah Hill, I just wanted to hop on here and bring y'all a really quick update on our lawsuit asking the Supreme Court to step in and block the Illinois assault weapons ban and the Naperville AR-15 sale ban. As y'all know, we took that to the Supreme Court and asked for an emergency relief for the citizens of Illinois, suspending the enforcement of these unconstitutional laws. Well, Amy Coney Barrett took the very unusual step of asking Illinois for a response. Basically said, now give me your best reasons why I shouldn't do this. That response was due today. I just finished reading it. And y'all, it is a whole lot of nonsense. It's the same tired gun control arguments that we have been seeing from day one of this litigation. AR-15s are not guns for the purposes of the Second Amendment. We're going to engage in interest balancing anyway, even though the Supreme Court said we couldn't do that, et cetera, et cetera. I just spoke with our attorney. He confirmed that there are no surprises in this. This was what we expected to see, and it is very easily answered. So we will be filing that response here in a few days. So stay tuned for more updates, and please, if you haven't already, click the link below to get involved and help us fight this case.
So again, that's Hannah Hill with her latest reaction to the state's filing in the U.S. Supreme Court in the Naperville challenge. So we'll be watching that closely. Again, the Naperville challenge could possibly lead to Justice Amy Coney Barrett possibly acting on her own to issue an injunction before the January 1st deadline to register firearms that are banned by state law in the state of Illinois, or people could possibly face a felony. So we'll still be watching that case to see ultimately what happens, but in a separate U.S. Supreme Court case that we'll touch on here in a moment, we're expecting a few more things to drop. But I did want to just revisit some of what Governor J.B. Pritzker had to say on Monday in anticipation of responding to the Naperville plaintiffs for that Wednesday deadline. And again, we reviewed some of the top line arguments the state made in their filing that was made yesterday and came in at about 3 o'clock-ish or so our time. But here's the governor on Monday talking about why he thinks that ultimately they'll win in the U.S. Supreme Court.
There has to be a limit to the kinds of weapons that people can keep in their homes. And, we have lots that are available to people, lots of weapons to protect yourself, and those that are available for sporting use. But guns that shoot, 30, 50, 100, bullets at a time are guns that people don't need to have in their homes for protection or for sporting use. And so
I do want to pause there and just, does anybody in the chat know of a firearm that shoots 30 or 50 or 100 rounds at a time? At a time. What, like one trigger pull and then all of a sudden it's 50 rounds at one time or 100 rounds at one time? There might be something in the military, like on a naval ship somewhere that has something. I don't know. But anybody familiar with, 50 barrels that shoot at once? Again, the governor seeming to conflate hyperbolic concerns with what is legitimately being regulated in the state of Illinois with the ban on semi-automatic firearms. And again, people commenting here live saying, nope. Birdshot? Well, that's a good point, Joe. Interesting. I don't know, how many pellets are actually in a shotgun shell for birdshot, but that's interesting. Never seen one do that. Somebody else saying that the governor sounds ridiculous. Others saying nope. Of course, if you're watching us live, you can comment as the program proceeds. But back to the governor.
I'm hopeful that the Supreme Court will make a ruling that will recognize that the safety of our families is more important than people's desire to be able to shoot guns that really are weapons of war. Well, sure. Any time that more weapons are being purchased that are weapons of war that can shoot the kinds of rapid fire mechanism that can shoot rapid fire is dangerous for people. So, but I don't think that that's what will happen here. I know that I guess Coney Barrett is being petitioned for that. So we'll have to see. But I think in the long run that we will win at the Supreme Court. But are we concerned? Always a little bit, because you never know what the
And then the governor, again, talking about how he doesn't know what the outcome is going to be. But obviously, you've got this case that was filed in the U.S. Supreme Court, Naperville Association, the Naperville case with the National Association for Gun Rights versus the city of Naperville and Illinois. And if you want to, you can go and read the filing from the state of Illinois that was filed yesterday. And as we did yesterday evening, we kind of just looked over the headlines here. The application is not shown that this court's likely to grant cert. Applicants have not shown that they are indisputably entitled to relief. It's not indisputably clear that the Second Amendment and ordinance regulates conduct protected by the Second Amendment. It's not indisputably clear that the act and ordinance are inconsistent with the nation's history of regulating firearms. And applicants' contrary arguments are not persuasive. No critical or exigent circumstance exists that would warrant an injunction pending further review. What's interesting there is they note that even the plaintiffs out of Naperville waited 2 weeks to file for an emergency injunction pending review. And that was denied by the Seventh Circuit while a review en banc, full panel of the appeals court, is still pending. So we'll be watching to see if whether or not the full appeals court will take this case up. Again, we've got, 3 weeks before the January 1st deadline, so a lot of things still possible to drop into place here. But we also want to take a look at the latest in the Calkins case in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. So yesterday also, it wasn't just the Naperville case where there was action. You had action in the Calkins case. So Friday, if you remember, the governor said that he was not going to respond to the allegations in Calkins' case. Calkins' case is a Second Amendment case, but it is also a case about conflicts of interest, and it uses previous Supreme Court precedents about justices in another state getting campaign contributions from a defendant. That defendant was a private party actor, not leaders of two of the legislative branches of state government. And that's something that when we talked with Jerry Stocks, it was a long conversation we had with him. I would encourage you to go check that out. But here's just some of what Stocks had to say when we chatted on Sunday.
Keep in mind what happened just approximately 2 weeks ago. The Illinois State Board of Elections, to my knowledge, confirmed a penalty against one of Senate President Harman's counsel in the case for $99,500, I think pretty much a record, because of concealed independent campaign expenditures from an independent committee for the benefit of Justices Rochford and O'Brien. Now, it was concealed, meaning it wasn't reported timely. And prepare for this. $700,000 of the funding that I'm about to describe came from Harman into this committee run by his counsel that contributed an additional $7.3 million to elect Justices Rochford and O'Brien. That is in addition to the $2.6 million from the defendants and their counsel that went to their election that we raised in our petition. Those are just the direct expenditures that went directly to the campaign funds of the judges where they could control the messaging. Well, the other 7.3 was non-disclosed, meaning the voters had no opportunity to know those expenditures that came from the committee controlled by Mr. Kaysen, one of the counsel appearing for Senate President Harman, to the tune of $7.3 million. A lot of the gifting was what we call split reporting, where they're running television ads, a committee called All for Justice. I just learned this. Tomorrow or Tuesday, depending when it gets back from the publisher, we will be filing a supplement to our petition, raising these issues and pointing out this newly discovered material.
And Stocks did indeed file that supplemental, and you can look at that yourself on the docket for the Calkins case, where he lays out in a supplemental brief even more detail about the questions of how much campaign funding went to these two Supreme Court justice candidates. But the case that he's ultimately using as precedent is the Caperton v. Massey case. And he talked about how that dealt with sizable campaign contributions, but the campaign contributions in Illinois to two Supreme Court justice candidates coming from the leaders of the two other branches of government, the executive and the legislative branch, giving campaign funds to candidates for the judicial branch, the state's highest court. He says that is magnitudes more serious than what the Caperton v. Massey challenge was all about.
So, in terms of magnitude, this is just the money, all right? And Caperton was just money. We are Caperton by magnitudes on the money, but we have evidence of a shared commitment to a specific outcome with the contributing defendants, who are also the leaders of the other branches of government. The significance of that shared commitment, it wasn't just an expression of judicial philosophy. I mean, a judicial candidate, they have free speech rights and campaign rights, and we're not even in that realm. They specifically signed off or allowed themselves to be represented to the public as signing off on a specific outcome of an assault weapons ban. And here, this next phrase is significant. When the General Assembly reconvened. Not only were they pledging themselves to an assault weapons ban, they were pledging themselves to the process by which it would come to pass and the immediacy by which they expected it to come to pass. And it all played out that way. And then we get to a third level that is absent in Caperton, and that was intolerable. Here we have the leadership of the other branches of government that are the ones contributing these funds, sharing these commitments. And that strikes at the heart and core of the independence of the judiciary, a de facto dissolution of separation of powers under our state constitution. And it's the classic Illinois story. Outrageous, stinks to high heaven, and another chapter of blatant disregard for the rule of law and the rights of citizens in this state. Here,
so again, Jerry Stocks talking about the case and where ultimately we go from here. The question is going to be in front of the U.S. Supreme Court, because what you have is Justice Amy Coney Barrett, after getting the state's response that they're not going to respond to the Calkins case. Jerry, he filed a supplemental brief with more detail about the campaign spending. And then on Wednesday, yesterday, Justice Amy Coney Barrett distributed the case for conference to the rest of the Supreme Court for their conference on January 5th. Now, I know that that's after the January 1st deadline to register. Keep in mind, you still got the Naperville case that could be dealing with the direct question about the Second Amendment. The Calkins case really deals with the issue of, not just the Second Amendment, which is central to the case, but also the conflicts of interest. So I think that that's a distinguishable difference that the Supreme Court could possibly take up, especially with them now sending it to conference for January 5th. But if you recall, back in March, I asked Governor J.B. Pritzker to explain his $1 million donations to then Supreme Court Justice candidates Elizabeth Rochford and Mary O'Brien. Here's what the governor had to say.
This is something that the right wing is trying to stir up. I know you've written about it. The fact of the matter is I supported candidates who are running all across the board. If you're suggesting that the fact that I gave money to, let's say, the Democratic Party or to the committees that supported candidates means that everybody who received any money has to recuse themselves from anything to do with the state of Illinois, that's ridiculous. And I've certainly never asked anybody to vote a certain way or decide on a case a certain way. I would never do that. I never have. I never will. And these are independent judges, and they didn't go around and campaign on things, that they thought would win my support for them. I believe in them. I supported them like lots of other people did.
Again, he says that they're independent candidates, independent judges, but as Stocks says, there's evidence suggesting that they had a political alignment on a goal to pass a ban on semi-automatic firearms when the legislature reconvenes. Back to Stocks.
The political end, the context for all of their action is stripping a fundamental constitutional right in the form of the Second Amendment. I mean, they're just not doing this so that they can favor a private litigant wanting to avoid a punitive damage judgment like some of our precedent State Farm case and things that were thrown at us before the trial, before the Supreme Court of Illinois. This is something far more pervasive, fundamental, and strikes at the heart of the very legitimacy of our institutions in this state.
Clearly, we'll be watching that case closely as well. Bishop on Air with you. Thanks for hanging out. We've got more to get to. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow along on Twitter, X, Facebook, YouTube. Be sure to also check out the store if you want to support the program further. You could do so. But appreciate you guys tuning in as always. And let's continue on. All right. It is Bishop on Air. Anywhere, just search Bishop on Air. While we're dealing with the ongoing litigation over Illinois' gun and magazine ban, the Congress apparently is looking at their own type of gun ban. Now, I've been really deep in tracking all of the different cases in Illinois. You've got the 2 Supreme Court cases that we just talked about. You've got the Southern District of Illinois that's taking up the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois case, trying to suspend the January 1st deadline to register. That's going to be December 12th. But you also have the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. They're going to be hearing about the most recent second notice rules from Illinois State Police on those gun ban rules. But while I'm deep in all that, you've got members in the U.S. Senate trying to advance different types of gun control legislation. And let's go ahead and hear what some of the debate has been. Chuck Schumer posted on Twitter what he wants to see happen. Here's a bit of the video of he posting about what he wants to make ultimately the law of the land in the United States.
That the Judiciary Committee be discharged from further consideration of S-25. And the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration, that the bill be considered read a third time and passed.
Is there objection?
I object.
Here are the facts. The scourge of gun violence in America is a national crisis. The American people are sick and tired of enduring one mass shooting after another. They are sick and tired of vigils and moments of silence for family, friends, classmates, co-workers. Today, Democrats have moved to pass the assault weapons ban to help rid our streets of these deadly weapons. We still feel the unquenchable suffering of the families of Sandy Hook, where 11 years ago, next week, 26 innocent lives were cut short by an automatic weapon. I still see the pictures of those little children, and I still remember, because I speak to them all fairly recently, the parents who have a hole in their hearts forever because some madman with an assault weapon was able to kill 26 of them, one after the other. We still feel the agony of places like Buffalo, where a year and a half ago, a gunman murdered 10 people in cold blood at a Tops grocery store. I was at that grocery store a few days later. I still feel their pain. We feel the pain of Uvalde, Las Vegas, Orlando, El Paso. The list sadly goes on and on and on.
And Schumer goes on to talk more about it, but let's go ahead and hear what some of the Republican opposition had to say. You have Senator Mike Lee addressing this as well in comments that he made on the Senate floor about the proposal.
We're being asked to pass by unanimous consent today without additional debate, discussion, opportunity for amendment, opportunity for input by the public. The bill that is S-494, the Background Check Expansion Act, has some real problems with it. Problems that I think make it a bill that stands to transform, in some circumstances, ordinary, law-abiding citizens into criminals. We always have to consider this when evaluating any law, particularly any law with criminal implications, that touches on a constitutionally protected right enumerated in a constitutional amendment.
And I think that's really the crux of all of this. You've got stories of shootings that happen, people killed by individuals using firearms, either gang violence in Chicago or a deranged individual going into a school or a bank to try to make a political point, as we recently saw with one mass shooting. So you've got all of those factors, obviously, but that interest balancing has been pushed to the side by the U.S. Supreme Court. So when it comes to outlawing things constitutionally protected, Mike Lee saying that you got to be cautious about all of that. So what exactly is going on with the Senate, and what were they trying to pass ultimately? You've got the Illinois State Rifle Association recently sharing comments on Twitter as well. And let's go ahead and pull this up. Why we got no audio, not sure. But let's click through and see if we can get this so you guys can hear it. This is... oh, I know why, because I had it muted. Here we go.
A need for a national...
All right, rewind that. It's live programming, folks.
Hi, I'm Doug Mayhall, president of the Illinois State Rifle Association, and I'm here for another update. Governor Pritzker continues to go on national TV talking about a need for a national gun ban on commonly used firearms, just like the unconstitutional ban he passed here in Illinois last January. What he doesn't talk about is the mass confusion this law has created, and that nobody, including his fellow Democrats who wrote the law, can explain this new law. As a result, law-abiding gun owners in Illinois remain in a state of confusion thanks to the incredibly vague rules the Illinois State Police have released on Governor Pritzker's registration scheme. And we don't blame the Illinois State Police. It's a badly written law that won't make us any safer. What's more, when leading groups, including the ISRA, testified at public hearings which were held to address these concerns, we were met with a resounding, "We don't know, and could you submit that question in writing?" Again, there will be federal court hearings coming up soon on these rules, so stay tuned. In addition, we expect the rules to keep changing throughout this month. And again, the ISRA is warning gun owners to wait until the outcome of these hearings and changes before making any decisions on registration. Rest assured, the ISRA will remain on the front lines and will continue to stand up to Governor Pritzker in the courts and in the press to keep this unconstitutional ban from becoming law in other states as well.
So you've got the Illinois State Rifle Association warning that some in Washington, D.C. are trying to take Governor J.B. Pritzker's gun ban and implement it nationwide. So clearly some concerns there as to what happened in the Senate yesterday. But the ongoing concerns, just wanted to make more clear from the Second Amendment Foundation. I talked with Alan Gottlieb yesterday, and he spelled out kind of what happened, right? Because, again, I was monitoring the U.S. Supreme Court's Illinois filings, trying to find that out, and I saw messages flowing in about what was going on in Congress. So reached out to Alan, and we chatted just briefly. He kind of gave me a good rundown of what was going on in the U.S. Senate.
Senator Chuck Schumer has announced that he wants to bring a gun ban bill for semi-automatic firearms to the floor of the Senate. And today he tried to do it, but he needed unanimous consent to do it without having it on a calendar. And the Republicans obviously wouldn't go along with it, so it didn't happen today. But he's going to try to bring it back probably, either trying to get the 60 vote threshold to be able to get it to the floor, or probably try and bring it as an amendment to another bill that, quote unquote, he thinks that, he could force more Republicans to vote for it. So it's not at this juncture, but he's got some hurdles to try and get over to get it, onto the Senate floor and get a vote. Then, of course, Greg, in all honesty, if he gets it to the Senate floor and gets a vote and was to pass it, he still have to get it passed in the House, in the House, which is another hurdle he'd have to go through. But of course, if he's able to get anything passed, there's no doubt that Joe Biden would sign it into law.
So I asked Alan also just to kind of, compare what was being proposed in the U.S. Senate that didn't advance, but what was being proposed. How's that similar to, say, Illinois' law that's being challenged in the courts? How's that similar to, say, the assault weapons ban of 1994?
Pretty much 1994 with some bells and whistles added on to it to make it a bit more strict, is what our understanding at this juncture is. But there's also another bill that's been put into the hopper in the Senate by Senator King from Rhode Island that redefines what assault weapon is by not calling it an assault weapon, but calling it a gas-powered gun. And but what they mean by gas-powered gun, it means that the platforms of like AR-15s pretty much work on the fact that when you fire a bullet, the gas from the explosion of the gunpowder helps recycle the bullet from the magazine into the chamber. And so instead of calling it an assault weapon, they want to call it a gas-powered gun and try all over again to get around some of the lawsuits they haven't won, ones they know they're going to lose. And so they're trying to just redefine it and give it a new name.
So Alan also spoke to the political posturing that really is evidence from the U.S. the U.S. Senate having this vote, putting people on record, getting these statements out, getting these videos out, having the media talk about all of this. Is this more to do about the likelihood of getting something like this passed, or is this more to do with heading into the primary season and also the November 2024 election?
Well, I think part of Senator Schumer's bringing this bill, trying to get the bill to the floor for a vote, is trying to do some of the political posturing for 2024 in getting a vote, so he can try and say that they're for saving lives and Republicans are not. Of course, the thing is, in the battleground states, it may not play out the way he'd like it to play out. But, a lot of the Democrats, or the Democrat-controlled leadership, it comes from, cities, San Francisco, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore, Chicago. And so the problem is that they're in an echo chamber. So while it helps rally their base in areas where there's no chance for them to lose anyway, and no chance for Republicans to win, it sounds great to them in their echo chamber. But out across America, in other districts, it doesn't play that well. And I don't think they're looking at it that way, but I think they're posturing and trying to, please their base, and and they talk to themselves. And most of the leadership represents districts that don't support gun rights. So, they pat themselves on the back, but it doesn't really get them anywhere.
So obviously, the political posturing is fascinating to talk about, and it will be something we continue to cover every day as we wake up and bring you Bishop on air. Be sure to like, subscribe, and follow along. Click that notification bell as well. Also, I asked Alan to react to the low registration numbers in the state of Illinois when it comes to the gun ban registry. And as we've been tracking, you can see these numbers here. The total number of individuals who have completed a disclosure, 4,800 of 2.4 million firearm owner identification card holders. That is 0.20%. 0.20%. So 0.20%. Not even a half of a percentage point. Not even a quarter of a percentage point of firearm owner identification card holders. Now, say only half of the FOID card holders in Illinois have a banned firearm. Then what? You can assume that the registration rate's then 0.4%. Either way, it's something that Gottlieb reacted to.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. The non-compliance rate is very great. People don't trust the government at all, and they just won't comply with it. So while they put these things on the books as law, they really don't work, and I think that proves it. The non-compliance rates aren't going to go up very much from where they're at right now.
So Gottlieb just reacting a bit to both the national gun stuff, but also the state gun stuff as to the registration numbers. So good to chat with him. Hopefully you guys got a little bit more understanding of what's going on in the U.S. Senate, but obviously we'll be tracking that as well here with Bishop on Air. Got to take another just short break, so stay with us, all right? It is right here, Facebook, Twitter, X, YouTube. Like, subscribe, follow along, and be sure to share the video with your friends who are interested in what's going on with Illinois' gun ban, all right? More than 25,000 undocumented migrants seeking asylum in Chicago over the past 15 months. And a temporary tent that was going to be set up apparently is on pause because the land it was on had toxic chemicals in the soil. So you've got the state putting a hold on that while you've got the contention seeming to grow between the state and the city. While city aldermen are saying, all right, it's enough. Brandon Johnson, the mayor of Chicago, he needs to fire those who are involved in all of this. So welcome back, Bishop on Air, hanging back with you, back live after doing a few days as a guest host on WMAY. Enjoyed the time there, but I missed being with you guys each and every weekday morning as well, especially with what seems to be a larger audience, especially whenever we segment these clips out. I'm blown away by the support, the comments. Yes, there's a few technical things we continue continue to work out, making all this happen in my home office. All right, so yeah, thanks for hanging out. But regardless, we've got even more to tackle. All right, so a lot of taxpayer dollars are going to the migrant crisis. We're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, and it could be upwards to $1 billion. Governor J.B. Pritzker recently said that it's possible that the legislature, when they come back in January, could take up a supplemental appropriation to further deal with this, because the city and states continue to spend tens of millions of dollars every week, if not every month, and hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 15 months. So you had Brighton Park up in Chicago, where it was a site that the city had picked to build a military-style base camp tent, and they had an environmental impact report done on the soil. They didn't release that to the media or to the state of Illinois until last minute on Friday. When it came out, it showed, oh boy, all right, there's some toxic chemicals in that soil at Brighton Park. So apparently some mitigation efforts were attempted, but Governor J.B. Pritzker was asked about that and the relationship that he has with Brandon Johnson, as media reports indicates that it's not the best of relationships. Here's Governor Pritzker earlier this week. Let me make sure this is up.
We have a good relationship with one another, and I know the media would like to, every time there's a governor and a mayor of Chicago, when you occasionally have things you're working out together, they want to turn it into they hate each other. Now, there have been mayors and governors in the past that don't like each other, but the truth is that we get along, that we have a lot to accomplish. Chicago is an important economic driver for the country, not to mention for the state of Illinois. And I've really made it my mission. I've had now 3 mayors that I've worked with. I've made it my mission to make sure that the relationship is good. Even when you disagree occasionally on something, you just need to work it out. And whenever we have disagreed, we have worked it out. So I feel really good about the relationship and about the future working together. We do share one overriding concern together, and that's lifting up the working people of our state, making sure that people are doing well, that families are thriving, making the investments that are necessary for that. And so that's a great common ground to work from.
Show the governor kind of downplaying that there's some conflict between Chicago and the state. But after that environmental impact study came out, the governor, he put a halt on the process of building that out in Brighton Park in Chicago while the environmental investigation continues.
The IEPA, of course, is reviewing that. There's a pause that we put in place pending their review and results of that review, which will come out sometime very soon.
Sometime very soon, we shall see, but a pause has been put in place. Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson being asked about this whole situation earlier this week, and NBC5 Chicago had this posted on their YouTube channel.
It's been substantiated at being safe by third-party validators. And again, the contract that the state of Illinois went into with GardaWorld as they continue to build out on this site, there was no indication throughout this entire process that a standard or a different methodology was preferable by the state of Illinois. Now, as far as our plan is still very much alive. As I said, that as we continue to remove people out of police districts, that assignment that I've given to my administration, we're working through that. And again, from 4,000 people that were sleeping outside or in police districts and an airport, we've reduced that number significantly down to 500, and we're going to continue to assess sites because the mission is still very much alive. We have to make sure that this migrant crisis and this mission, as you all know, is an international crisis. In fact, we have to continue to plan ahead. It's imperative. This time last year, between November and December, 8 buses came. Between 2 months this time last year. We've received over 80 buses alone just in the month of November. And so it's clear that, forces that want to continue to send people to the city of Chicago, that have always been clear that we have to be forthright and plan ahead, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
So he says that there are, plan A, of course, and there's plan B, C, D, and F, but that wasn't enough for several Chicago aldermen, Alderman Ray Lopez and Alderman Beal and another. They released a letter that they essentially said that some of the city's leaders in this need to resign or be fired. So Alderman Lopez, along with Alderman Beal and Alderman Napolitano, in this letter say the city of Chicago needs individuals who are serious, deliberative, and collaborative in addressing the ongoing migrant asylum seeker crisis that began in August of 2022 and continues to this day. Members of the city council, philanthropic community, and everyday Chicagoans want efforts that are respectful of their taxpayer dollars being spent by your administration to address the humanitarian crisis. What we have seen in Brighton Park, however, does not show members of your administration are being either serious, deliberative, or collaborative in addressing this issue. Taxpayer funds are now wasted after a failed attempt to build a highly cancerous soil without permits, without true community engagement, without a plan that's respectful to those whom so many performatively articulate sanctuary for in our city. So therefore, they signed this. It wasn't just those three. It was several others. You've got the list of names of people that they want to resign. And again, this is a letter being signed by Anthony Beal, Raymond Lopez, and Anthony Napolitano. Beal and Lopez held a news conference yesterday to talk more about this. Here's Beal spelling out some of why he thinks that these individuals need to be let go from the Johnson administration. And let's fire that up.
For the resignation of an entire team of the mayor's administration because of their lack of leadership, their lack of ability of getting things done, and totally wasting taxpayer dollars to the tune of tens of millions of dollars. This is a site where the city knew had contaminants, but was forcing this issue down the throats of the community that did not want it. The community warned the administration that there were contaminants here, and it was totally ignored. And so when you have people who are advising the mayor on sites like this, making decisions on sites like this that are putting people in harm's way, is doing a total disservice to the people of the city of Chicago, and they should not be employed and being paid for spending and wasting tens of millions of dollars. Now, just yesterday, I reached out to the governor's office, and I'm still waiting a call back, because if these people are not removed from wasting taxpayer dollars, I'm asking the governor to come in and take over the entire migrant crisis here in the city of Chicago, because we see today that we don't have the confidence, the capability to basically deal with this crisis that's hurting our city today. We're spending.
So Alderman Beal continued on, and this is a video from WGN, and Alderman Lopez also chiming in on the crisis and what he says is the lack of accountable leadership within the city of Chicago mayoral office.
Failed in this moment. We cannot allow them to continue to drive policy here in the city of Chicago, putting not only the lives of those individuals at risk, but putting taxpayers on the hook for future litigation once those health issues that we know are probable impact the migrants whom we've welcomed. Additionally, those residents in Brighton Park around us here are owed an answer by Mayor Johnson and his team as to why and what they are going to do with regards to the mitigation efforts when they were hauling toxic cancer-causing materials out of the community in open-air dump trucks, driving them through the neighborhoods to take them away from this site. This is a travesty of leadership.
He goes on to spell out who exactly he wants to see let go, but he also talks about how this crisis isn't all of a sudden a crisis now. This is something that has been known since, 15 months ago.
Going on during the mayoral campaign. This has been going on since August of 2022. This is not a new crisis, and everyone running for mayor knew that they were going to have to address this border crisis that was shipped to the city of Chicago. Mayor Brandon Johnson is the leader of the third largest city in the United States. He is a Democratic leader, and he has failed to put his power to work in Washington to demand that they correct their failures. Chicago taxpayers cannot continue to be on the hook for the federal government's failures, but also for the failures of our own government to manage crises like this.
And Lopez also went on to talk about, again, how the mayor says he's got some backup plans here, though the mayor apparently didn't spell that out to members of the media asking him questions earlier this week. But Lopez says that whatever the plans are, obviously aren't good enough.
As someone who volunteered space in his ward, I worked to provide Gage Park Fieldhouse in June to clear out the police stations of what at that point was 160 people residing in the police stations. 160. After we cleared out that out the stations, 2,000 more people came to the city of Chicago. What this administration, like the one before it, has failed to do is create plans for both a short and a long-term solution to dealing with this crisis. Thinking that the federal government or the Republican governors are going to stop simply because we say don't come is so beyond short-sighted. And I don't believe for an instant that there's a B, C, D, E, or F, because there never even was an A plan to deal with the migrants.
So again, that's some of the conversation that some Chicago aldermen are having, trying to get individuals of the Johnson administration fired for how they handled the Brighton Park situation. Obviously, we'll be watching that closely as well, because you've got the issue coming in front of the Illinois legislature with the possibility of a supplemental appropriation, and your tax dollars going to all of this. That's your program here for Bishop on Air. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow along, and if you want to support the show, you can check out bishoponair.com. Go to the store, see all the different things you can get Bishop on Air on, coffee mugs, t-shirts, bumper stickers. We'll be thinking of some other designs that are free speech, free press associated, so hopefully you can support us that way. But another way to support us is to tell your friends about it, all right? Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the day. We'll see you back here tomorrow to wrap up the week. Holy moly. It's Bishop on Air. Who's still in here? Who's still watching live? Give me that thumbs up if you're still hanging out. I see there's almost 200 people watching. What are you doing? You like that, Teddy? Randall? Nice little quote there. Those who know. Teddy bears are more regulated. You know, they make sure that teddy bears don't have sharp, pointy objects in them so that kids don't hurt themselves. Teddy bears are more regulated. So be sure to check that out at the store if you want. And it's not just a teddy bear. You can get a dog, a bunny. I think the bunny's pretty cool. It's a little stuffed animal. Still here, AS3SXP. Why? I'm done. I mean, the show's over. All right. I'm going to get out of here, guys. Have a good day. A big wink to my wife. Love you guys.